I died choking on my own blood, while my fiancé and my best friend laughed over my shattered body. They took my family's fortune, my legacy, and my life. But fate made a mistake. It sent me back. Now it's my turn to absolutely ruin them. The cold, unforgiving surface of the Italian marble floor is a sensation I will never forget. It was supposed to be the happiest night of my life, the eve of my wedding. Instead, it was the night I learned the true cost of blind trust. I remember the sharp, agonizing pain radiating from my spine, the metallic taste of blood pooling in my mouth, and the sound of rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Park Avenue penthouse. But worse than the physical agony was the sound of their laughter. Preston Montgomery, the man I had loved for 3 years, stood at the top of the sweeping staircase. Next to him was Bianca Rossi, my college roommate, my confidant, and my maid of honor. Preston's hand was resting casually on Bianca's waist, a possessive, intimate grip that told me everything I needed to know in a single, devastating glance. "You were always too naive, Madeline," Preston sneered, his voice completely devoid of the warm, syrupy charm he had used to court me. "Did you honestly think a Montgomery would settle for you out of love? You were a stepping stone. The Kensington vault was the only thing about you I ever found attractive." Bianca leaned over the railing, her eyes glittering with malicious glee. "Don't worry, Maddie. We'll take excellent care of your family's estate. And your trust fund? It's already been wired to an offshore account in the Caymans under my name. You signed the authorization papers yesterday when you thought you were approving the floral arrangements." I tried to speak, to scream, but only a wet, gurgling sound escaped my lips. Preston had pushed me. A swift, brutal shove down 30 marble steps. My vision began to blur, darkening at the edges. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me whole was Preston pulling Bianca into a passionate kiss, stepping over my broken body as if I were nothing more than trash left on the pavement. Then nothing, just an endless, suffocating void. Gasp. My eyes snapped open, and I shot up, my chest heaving as I sucked in greedy, desperate lungfuls of air. I flailed my arms, expecting to feel the cold marble, expecting my hands to come away slick with my own blood. Instead, my fingers curled into soft Egyptian cotton sheets. I was trembling violently. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Where was I? I looked around the room, disoriented. The opulent crystal chandelier, the scent of fresh white lilies. The breathtaking view of Central Park bathed in the golden hour light. It was my suite at the Plaza Hotel. I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the vanity mirror. I braced myself for bruised skin, for cracked bones, for death. But the woman staring back at me was flawless. My skin was glowing, my breathing was steady, and there was absolutely no sign of trauma. My trembling hands reached for the smartphone resting on the vanity. I tapped the screen. September 14th. My breath hitched. I dropped the phone as if it burned me. September 14th. Exactly 1 year ago. Today was the day of the annual Kensington Charity Gala. The day Preston Montgomery was scheduled to get down on one knee in front of 400 of New York's most elite socialites and ask for my hand in marriage. I sank to the floor, pulling my knees to my chest as the memories flooded back. I hadn't survived a nightmare. I had lived it. I had died. And somehow, by some inexplicable twist of the universe, I had been thrown back in time. I was 24 again. The Kensington fortune was still intact. My father's company was still secure, and I was still engaged to a murderer. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat, quickly turning into a sob. I cried for the girl who had died on that cold marble floor. I cried for the naive, trusting Madeline who believed in fairy tales and true love. I let myself shower for exactly 10 minutes. Then I stopped. I wiped my tears, standing up slowly. I looked back into the mirror, but the terrified girl was gone. In her place was a woman who had crossed the boundary of death and returned with a singular, burning purpose. Preston and Bianca thought they were master manipulators. They thought they had played the ultimate game of chess. But they didn't realize the board had just been flipped, and I already knew all their moves. There was a soft knock on the suite door. "Maddie? It's me, Bianca. I brought the champagne and your dress." Hearing her voice, that sweet, melodic tone that masked a venomous snake, sent a surge of pure, icy adrenaline through my veins. "Come in, Bea," I called out, forcing my voice to sound light and breathless. Bianca swept into the room, holding a garment bag and a bottle of Dom Perignon. She looked exactly as I remembered, stunning, impeccably dressed, and radiating fake warmth. "Oh, honey, you look a little pale," she cooed, rushing over to examine my face. "Nerves? Tonight is going to be perfect, I promise." "I know it will," I thought, suppressing a dark smile. "Just a little tired," I said smoothly, taking the champagne flute she offered. "I didn't drink it." "What dress did you bring?" In my past life, Bianca had chosen a demure, innocent white silk gown for me to wear. It made me look like a sacrificial lamb, which, looking back, was entirely her point. "The white Vera Wang," she beamed, unzipping the bag. I stepped past her, walking to the massive walk-in closet where my stylist had left several backup options. "Actually, Bianca," I said, pulling out a breathtaking, plunging crimson gown that screamed power and danger, "I think I'm going to wear red tonight. White just isn't my color anymore." Bianca blinked, visibly thrown off by my sudden defiance. "But Preston loves you in white. He says it brings out your innocence." I turned to her, holding the blood-red fabric against my body, and smiled a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Well, Preston is just going to have to get used to the new me." The ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was a sea of glittering diamonds, tailored tuxedos, and whispered ambitions. The annual Kensington Charity Gala was the crown jewel of the autumn social season, and as the heiress to the Kensington Empire, all eyes were naturally on me. But tonight, the whispers were different. I could feel the stares lingering on the crimson silk of my dress, tracing the bold, uncharacteristic confidence in my stride. I held my head high, a glass of sparkling water masquerading as a martini in my hand. My mind was razor sharp. "Madeline, darling." I braced myself as Preston emerged from the crowd. He was sickeningly handsome, with that tousled, sandy hair and a smile that had been practiced in front of a mirror 1,000 times. He reached out to pull me in for a kiss. My instincts screamed at me to claw his eyes out. The phantom pain in my spine throbbed in memory of his betrayal, but I forced my muscles to relax, turning my cheek just enough so his lips grazed my jaw instead of my mouth. "You look different tonight," Preston murmured, his brow furrowing slightly as his hand rested on the small of my back. "The red is intense." I felt like making a statement, I replied smoothly, stepping out of his touch under the guise of greeting a passing senator. Bianca was hovering nearby, watching us like a hawk. I could see the subtle, almost imperceptible glance exchanged between them, a look of conspiracy that I had been blind to for years. It made my stomach churn, but I fueled that nausea into raw, concentrated focus. As the evening progressed toward the inevitable climax, I positioned myself perfectly. At 10:00 p.m., the orchestra died down and Preston made his move. He strode confidently onto the main stage, tapping the microphone. The room fell into an expectant hush. "Ladies and gentlemen," Preston began, his voice echoing through the opulent ballroom, rich with feigned emotion. "Tonight is about charity, about giving back. But for me, tonight is also about a different kind of future." The spotlight swung, illuminating me in a pool of bright white light. The crowd parted. Preston descended the stage steps and walked toward me, pulling a velvet box from his tuxedo pocket. I saw Bianca in my peripheral vision, holding her phone up to record the moment, a smug, satisfied smirk playing on her lips. Preston dropped to one knee. Gasps echoed through the room. "Madeline Kensington," he said, opening the box to reveal a massive, flawless diamond, bought, I now knew, with money embezzled from my own father's company. "You are the light of my life, the only woman I could ever imagine standing beside me. Will you marry me?" In my previous life, I had burst into happy tears, thrown my arms around his neck, and sealed my death warrant. This time, I looked down at him in total, absolute silence. The seconds ticked by. The silence stretched, turning from expectant to incredibly uncomfortable. Preston's confident smile began to falter. The edges of his mouth twitched. "Madeline," he whispered, just low enough for only me to hear. "What are you doing? Say yes." I took a slow, deliberate step back. "No, Preston," I said. I didn't shout, but in the dead silence of the room, my voice carried with the force of a gunshot. The crowd erupted in a collective gasp. Preston stood up, his face flushing crimson. "Maddie, sweetheart, are you feeling well? Let's talk about this in pri." "I don't think there's anything to talk about," I interrupted, my voice dripping with ice. "I cannot, in good conscience, marry a man who is currently using my family's philanthropic trust to fund a luxury townhouse in Aspen." Preston's face drained of color. He looked like he had just been struck by lightning. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, his eyes darting frantically around the room as the whispers broke out like a wildfire. "And," I continued, turning my gaze to where Bianca stood frozen, her phone dropping to her side, "I certainly won't marry a man who spends 3 nights a week working late in the apartment of my maid of honor." Total pandemonium. Cameras flashed. Reporters who had been invited to cover the charity event were now furiously typing on their phones. Bianca let out a highly unconvincing shriek of denial and ran out of the ballroom, her face shielded by her hands. Preston reached for my arm, his mask entirely slipping to reveal the vicious, desperate man underneath. "You crazy bitch, what are you doing?" he hissed, his grip bruising. Before he could pull me closer, a shadow detached itself from the crowd. A hand, clad in a sleek black suit, clamped down on Preston's wrist with bone-crushing force. "I believe the lady said no, Preston." The voice was a low, dangerous baritone that sent a shiver down my spine. I looked up and my breath caught. Sebastian Montgomery. Preston's older, estranged half-brother. The legitimate heir. The ruthless, untouchable CEO of Montgomery Holdings. Sebastian was everything Preston pretended to be. Genuinely powerful, lethally intelligent, and terrifyingly calm. I was an apex predator in a tailored Brioni suit, with obsidian eyes that missed nothing. Preston snatched his hand back, massaging his wrist, his bravado entirely crushed under Sebastian's towering presence. "This isn't your business, Sebastian. It is when you're causing a scene at a public event and embarrassing our family name," Sebastian replied coldly, not even looking at his brother. His dark eyes were fixed entirely on me. "Miss Kensington, allow me to escort you out of this circus." He offered his arm. I didn't hesitate. I linked my arm through his, leaving Preston standing alone in the center of the ballroom, humiliated, exposed, and utterly ruined. Sebastian led me out of the stifling ballroom and up a private staircase to a secluded VIP balcony overlooking the city skyline. The crisp night air hit my face, and suddenly the adrenaline vanished. My knees weakened, and I leaned against the stone balustrade, taking deep, shaky breaths. "That," Sebastian's voice came from the shadows, smooth and laced with dark amusement, "was the most entertaining thing I have seen in this city in a decade." I turned to face him. He was leaning against the doorway, a lit cigar in one hand, watching me with an intensity that made me feel entirely transparent. "I'm glad my personal betrayal could provide you with some evening entertainment, Mr. Montgomery," I said sharply. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. He stepped closer, the scent of expensive tobacco and bergamot washing over me. "Don't play coy, Madeline. There were no tears in your eyes. That wasn't the reaction of a heartbroken woman. That was a calculated, meticulously planned execution." I narrowed my eyes. "What do you want, Sebastian?" "I want the same thing you do," he said, stopping mere inches from me. The sheer gravity of his voice was overwhelming. "You want to obliterate my brother. You want to salt the earth so he can never rebuild his reputation. And what do you want?" Preston has been quietly rallying my board of directors, trying to force a vote of no confidence to siphon Montgomery Holdings shares. "He's an annoying insect, but a persistent one," Sebastian explained, his eyes darkening. "If he had met you and secured the Kensington backing, he would have had the capital to challenge me." "He doesn't have me," I stated firmly. "No, he doesn't," Sebastian agreed, a predatory smile slowly curving his lips. "But we can make sure he has absolutely nothing left. Not a dime, not a shred of dignity, and not a single ally in this city." He extended a hand toward me. "Marry me, Madeline." I stared at him, my heart stalling in my chest. "Excuse me, a strategic alliance," Sebastian clarified smoothly. "You get the ultimate revenge, a shield against whatever desperate retaliation Preston attempts, and the total destruction of the people who crossed you. I secure my board by merging the Montgomery and Kensington names under my absolute control. It's perfectly mutually beneficial." I looked at the hand of the most feared man in New York's corporate underworld. A man who was offering me the exact weapon I needed to ensure Preston and Bianca never saw the light of day again. I didn't die and come back just to survive. I came back to win. Slowly, deliberately, I placed my hand in his. Deal. The morning after the gala, the internet was ablaze. Headlines screamed about the spectacular collapse of my engagement to Preston. I sat in Sebastian's austere, glass-walled office overlooking Wall Street, sipping black coffee. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Bianca had sent 40 text messages, alternating between pathetic apologies and vicious threats. I deleted them all without a second thought. Sebastian sat across from me, his dark eyes locked onto a tablet. He wore a crisp navy suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. The sheer power radiating from him was intoxicating, a stark contrast to the pathetic weakness I saw in Preston. "The board is reacting exactly as anticipated," Sebastian murmured, his voice a rich baritone that commanded the quiet room. "Preston's credibility is entirely ruined. Investors despise public humiliation." I placed my coffee cup up onto this mahogany desk. "He will not give up easily," I warned, remembering the brutal shove down those marble stairs. "He is desperate, and desperate men are incredibly dangerous." Sebastian finally looked up, a terrifyingly calm smile playing on his lips. "Let him be dangerous, Madeline. A tiger does not concern himself with the desperate thrashing of a cornered rat. We are making our very formal announcement today." Our public announcement was a masterclass in calculated theater. We did not host a press conference. We merely attended a highly exclusive gallery opening in Soho, arriving arm in arm. The massive emerald-cut diamond on my left ring finger, a family heirloom. Sebastian had casually tossed to me in the car, caught the flashing lights of the paparazzi perfectly. The message was loud, clear, and undeniable. Madeline Kensington had traded the pathetic prince for the ruling king. Within an hour, Montgomery Holdings' stock surged, stabilizing Sebastian's grip on the board. Meanwhile, Preston's separate shell companies began rapidly bleeding their assets. But the twist came 3 days later. I was in my private suite when the concierge called. "Miss Kensington, your sister is here." My blood turned to ice. Natalie. She had been studying in Paris during my previous life, completely removed from the tragedy. Why was she in New York? I rushed down to the lobby. Natalie stood there, clutching a designer handbag, looking furious. Beside her, wearing a sickeningly sweet smile, was Bianca. "Maddie," Natalie snapped, crossing her arms. "Bianca called me. She told me you lost your mind and stole Preston's brother, just to spite him right here today." Bianca had shifted her strategy. If she could not beat me in the press, she would isolate me from my own blood. "Natalie, do not listen to a single word that woman says," I said, stepping forward. Bianca immediately feigned tears, shrinking back like a wounded animal. "I just wanted to help, Maddie," Bianca whimpered, dabbing her dry eyes. "Preston is a wreck. You destroyed him over a simple misunderstanding." Natalie glared at me. "You always were dramatic, Madeline. But ruining a good man's life? Dad is furious. He is threatening to cut your access to the primary trust fund immediately." My father. He had always favored Preston, viewing him as the perfect son he never had. In my past life, Preston used that connection to steal the company. I took a deep breath, suppressing the burning rage. "Natalie, Bianca is sleeping with Preston. They have been embezzling from the charity fund." Bianca gasped loudly. "That is a disgusting lie," she cried out. Natalie shook her head in disgust. "I am going to Dad's office. You need to fix this, Maddie, or I will." She stormed out, dragging Bianca with her. I stood alone, realizing the brutal war was rapidly escalating today. I immediately went to Sebastian. He was in his penthouse, reviewing legal documents. When I explained the situation, his expression remained perfectly neutral. "Your father controls the voting shares of Kensington Enterprises," Sebastian analyzed coldly. "If Preston manipulates your father, he can leverage those shares to launch a hostile proxy war against my board. We need to cut off Preston's influence." I nodded, the memories of my family's ruin fueling my determination. "I need proof of the embezzlement. Concrete evidence that my father cannot ignore." Sebastian typed a brief message on his encrypted phone. "I know a very reliable forensic guy." The guy was a brilliant financial auditor named Harrison. Within 48 hours, Harrison had dismantled the offshore shell companies Bianca thought she had so cleverly hidden. The paper trail was absolute. But Sebastian wanted total annihilation. "Proof is merely paper," he said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. "We need a confession." I looked at him, my heart racing. "How?" Sebastian handed me a glass. "Preston is arrogant. He believes he is the smartest person in the room. We invite him to the annual shareholders' gala tomorrow night. We back him into a corner, and we just let him freely talk." The night of the shareholders' gala arrived heavily cloaked in thick tension. I wore a backless emerald gown, standing beside Sebastian like a heavily armored queen. Preston entered late, looking haggard, but trying desperately to maintain his arrogant swagger. Bianca clung to his arm, wearing the exact white silk dress she had tried to force on me. It was a pathetic, desperate attempt to mock me. I caught Preston from across the crowded room. I gave him a subtle, mocking smile and walked toward the private library attached to the ballroom. I knew he would blindly follow my quiet lead. The heavy oak door of the library clicked shut securely behind me. I turned around just as Preston stepped inside, his eyes bloodshot and his jaw tight with fury. "You ruined my life, Madeline," he spat, closing the distance between us. "You took my brother, my reputation, and my entire future." I did not back away from his towering anger. "You did that to yourself, Preston," I replied softly. He sneered, a harsh, ugly sound. "Your father is the company proxy votes tomorrow. He believes my lies. He always genuinely liked me more than he liked you anyway. Once I have those votes, Sebastian is entirely finished. He will lose control of the board, and I will finally rule everything." "Is that right?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "Just like you were going to take my trust fund to the Caymans with Bianca?" Preston laughed, a cruel sound that mirrored the laughter from my dying nightmare. Bianca actually knows how to play the game. "Yes, we took the charity money. And yes, I am absolutely going to take your whole company. You are just a stupid, naive little girl who got lucky playing with my older brother." He stepped dangerously closer, raising his hand aggressively. "I should have pushed you off a high balcony tonight." "I believe we have heard enough," a deep voice interrupted from the shadows. The heavy velvet curtains at the back of the library parted smoothly. Sebastian stepped out. He was not alone. Behind him stood my father, his face pale and contorted with horror. Natalie stood next to him, trembling uncontrollably. But more terrifying were the 4 men emerging from the adjacent study. They were not standard security. They moved with the silent, lethal precision of highly trained covert military tactical operatives. Preston froze, all the color draining from his face instantly. "Dad?" I said softly, looking at my devastated father. I told you the truth. My father ignored me, glaring at Preston with a terrifying, silent rage. You ushed, Preston, my father growled. The federal authorities are waiting outside right now. Preston panicked completely. He lunged toward the heavy doors, but the tactical operatives intercepted him flawlessly. They moved as a coordinated unit, pinning him down before he could even take 2 steps. Sebastian stood over his pathetic brother, adjusting his cuffs with the calm demeanor of a seasoned commander. You are done, little brother, Sebastian whispered, his voice a lethal promise. You crossed the wrong woman and the wrong organization. The operatives dragged a kicking, screaming Preston out through the private service elevator, completely avoiding the press outside. In the main ballroom, another unit had already apprehended Bianca, discreetly removing her from the premises before anyone noticed. The absolute horrific nightmare was finally over. My father pulled me into a desperate hug, apologizing profusely for doubting me. Natalie cried, begging for my forgiveness. I sincerely forgave them, but the naive girl they once knew was truly gone forever now. Later that evening, the penthouse was beautifully quiet. The massive, chaotic storm had finally passed. I stood on the sprawling terrace, looking out at the glittering city skyline. The crisp night air felt wonderfully refreshing against my skin. Sebastian walked out, holding 2 glasses of aged bourbon. He handed me one, his dark eyes analyzing my expression. The board is fully secure, he murmured, leaning against the railing. Your enemies are permanently neutralized. The tactical team executed the extraction flawlessly. Our contract is entirely fulfilled. I took a slow sip of the rich bourbon, savoring the intense, smoky flavor profile. I looked at the man who had helped me orchestrate the ultimate revenge. He was supposed to be a temporary alliance, a shield against Preston. But the strategic partnership had evolved into something incredibly profound. I reached out, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. What exactly happens now? I asked quietly. Sebastian set his glass down on the stone table. He closed the distance between us, wrapping his strong arms around my waist. He pulled me flush against his warm chest. I suppose, he whispered softly, we will have to negotiate a brand new contract for our shared future. His lips met mine, and the deep kiss was a perfect culmination of everything we had built together. It was fierce, unyielding, and completely intoxicating. I kissed him back with equal fervor, pouring all my gratitude and newfound strength into the embrace. I had died a weak, foolish girl, but I had returned as a formidable force. I had reclaimed my family legacy, destroyed my betrayers, and secured my empire. And I had found a partner who matched my ambition perfectly. We pulled apart slowly, both breathing heavily into the cool night air. The future finally belonged entirely to us. We stood there together, looking at the glittering city we now ruled. The stars shone brightly above us, a silent testament to my remarkable second chance at life. Preston and Bianca were gone, locked away securely where they could never hurt anyone again. My family was safe. The company was thriving under our joint leadership. I smiled, feeling a profound sense of genuine peace wash over my soul. This was not just a simple story of revenge anymore. This was a triumphant tale of complete rebirth. And my beautiful, powerful new life was only just beginning in this magnificent city. What an explosive ending to Madeline's journey of revenge. She successfully destroyed the people who betrayed her and found true power with the ruthless Sebastian. Did you expect that massive twist in the library? If you loved this intense story of betrayal, wealth, and vindication, please smash that like button, share this video with all your drama-loving friends, and make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another thrilling real-life tale. See you soon.